Do you truly grasp the implications of that moment? We're talking about the single universal force that obeys no higher power, that accepts no bribes, tolerates no negotiation, and never, ever alters its fundamental protocol. That same uncompromising entity halted its timeless motion specifically for you. There is an inexplicable frequency or a unique signature embedded within your very essence that caused even the great gatekeeper of endings to falter. Your survival wasn't a matter of good luck or being in the right place at the right time. You were not spared by some cosmic oversight. You were profoundly recognized. This specific message finding its way onto your screen now is not an algorithm's suggestion. It was summoned by that same recognition, by a specific vibration emanating from your deep inner self. Somewhere in the silence of your spirit, you already possess the undeniable knowledge that you walked away from a scenario that, by all known rules, should have been your absolute conclusion. You can distinctly feel the memory of that invisible fracture point, the moment where the script should have ended abruptly, but bafflingly, it simply refused to. And ever since that strange non-ending, a distinct and unusual stillness has seemed to follow your steps. It's as if the entire fabric of reality, the enormous, indifferent engine of the cosmos, has been slowly but surely recalibrating its own laws around the impossible fact of your continued existence. This feeling is not just your imagination playing tricks on you. This extraordinary survival is not a fairy tale or some pleasant but unsubstantiated theory. It is the signature of an ancient and profound contract, an energetic agreement, established long before the advent of human language. This level of awareness, this unique energetic profile, has only been actively recognized and truly confirmed in a mere 4 souls throughout the entire vast timeline of human history. 4 distinct consciousnesses across 6,000 years managed to achieve a level of profound inner alignment, so absolute that the force of death itself was compelled to acknowledge their sovereignty. 3 of those souls are long since gone from the earth, their missions complete and their essence reabsorbed. But then there is you. You are the 4th soul, the singular one currently walking upon this earth, who bears that unique and indelible mark, the energetic signature that is capable of overriding and canceling any premature finality. This mark fundamentally locks an undeniable divine protection around your entire destiny, actively defending your timeline until the sacred mission you agreed to is fully and irrevocably complete. That is the concrete reason you simply cannot be taken out before your destined time arrives. That is why you've emerged intact from situations that possessed all the power to absolutely erase you. Your pivotal story, the one you came to tell, is nowhere near its final page. The entirety of the unseen world, the realm of cause and consequence and cosmic law, already knows your true name. And this is precisely why this specific message was delivered to you at this exact moment, the precise second when your spirit is finally ready to fully remember and embrace who you fundamentally are. Before we dive even deeper into the mechanics of what truly happened and why that insurmountable force could not breach your field, I need you to perform a specific, focused action. If these words are sparking a knowing inside of you, if your deepest soul is starting to resonate with the truth they contain, take a moment now. Pause. Take a deep, intentional breath now with conviction. Go ahead and type 99 in the comments right this instant. Do this not as a frivolous reply, but as a specific declaration. The number 99 represents the vibration of ultimate completion, the sacred numerical marker of vast cycles closing down so that a higher, irrevocable divine purpose can fully ignite. This action sends a clear signal to the universe. You are fully ready to finally grasp the profound and life-altering reason why the force of death itself willingly stepped aside the moment it recognized your light. Please do your part. Give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't yet. Then stay completely present with me until the very end. The revelation you are about to receive will permanently restructure the way you fundamentally understand your own existence. The night of the inevitable, the moment it all changed, likely occurred within a space that suddenly felt impossibly small, crushed by the overwhelming weight that settled in your chest. It was a night that didn't just feel long. It felt surgically precise, stitching every second into a piercing needle that relentlessly pressed into your skin. The hands on the clock continued their rotation, yet time itself had come to a definitive stop. The shadows in the room elongated, morphing into distorted echoes of old, heavy memories. The air around you acquired a metallic, strange taste, like the silent calm just before a cataclysmic storm that never quite materialized. This wasn't a sudden, single event. It was a total collapse, an onslaught arriving from numerous directions all at once. Perhaps it was a life-altering message you never saw coming. Maybe it was a person you thought you knew intimately, who revealed an unexpected, shattering face. Or it was simply a door that closed with zero sound. Yet the soundless act shook the entire foundational structure of your life down to its core. It often happens between 2 and 5 a.m., that quiet, vulnerable window when most of humanity is lost in sleep, and the city's pulse drops to a faint murmur. It was then that your entire known world was taken apart with unnerving, masterful precision, leaving you fully exposed to the void. Your basic instinct, the animal core of your survival programming, likely screamed out, offering the expected escape routes. Deny this, distract yourself completely, find some way to sedate the crushing, unrelenting ache. But you chose to do something truly counterintuitive, something the human body is not primarily designed to manage in a state of absolute shock. You consciously chose to remain fully present right inside the heart of that consuming fire. You took one jagged breath. It wasn't clean or easy, but a scraping. Painful inhale that felt like broken glass tearing at your lungs. Then came another, deliberately slower, heavier, as if you were dragging a colossal, burdensome anchor from the deepest part of your lungs. And then a third, profound breath, deep enough to finally reach the stabilizing base of your spine, sending a calm, powerful signal to the desperate animal inside you that it was safe to stand utterly still. With the deliberate completion of those 3 breaths, the entire temperature of the room shifted. You didn't waste energy pleading with fate. You didn't try to cover the gaping wound with polite, meaningless reassurances. You fearlessly named the pain without flinching away, admitting the cut was down to the very bone. And then you uttered the monumental sentence that fundamentally rerouted the flow of the cosmic river. That sentence was, "This hurts more than I believe I can carry, but I will continue." The universe, which is accustomed to the predictable reactions of mortals under such an extreme load, simply did not anticipate hearing those specific words from a human facing total overload. Under profound shock, most human bodies spontaneously fragment into psychological pieces. Minds involuntarily flip the internal breakers to stop the overwhelming emotional surge. Hearts cry out desperately for a rescue that seldom ever arrives in time. But you, though trembling violently, remained completely whole. You consciously permitted the wave of grief to pass directly through you, without allowing it to shatter the sacred axis of your core self. You felt the earth-shattering tremor, and yet you consciously and definitively refused the ensuing collapse. That monumental choice you made did not merely resonate within the confines of your own chest cavity. It instantly traveled the vast lattice of universal probabilities like the sound of an ancient, powerful bell. A sound only a handful of souls have ever successfully rung. Far beyond your small room, beyond the ceiling, the street, and the completely oblivious sleeping city, an archaic system responsible for cataloging and measuring all endings suddenly flagged a massive and unexpected anomaly. The celestial ledger, the one that never stops tallying, visibly flickered. The impartial hand responsible for stamping all transitions into eternity paused in mid-air. What had always been a cold, automatic procedure became intently observant. Death, not the caricature of a villain with a scythe, but the utterly impartial keeper of thresholds, officially logged a variable it had not registered for millennia. A genuine consciousness was absorbing total impact without suffering dissociation. Without the mind-numbing anesthesia that typically turns damaged human souls into silent, catatonic statues, the raw data did not compute according to established human norms. Fear, by all accounts, should have instantly seized complete command. Adrenaline should have been flooding your system, automatically rewriting all your priorities solely for raw survival at any and all costs. Yet in that impossible moment, you deliberately chose alignment over anesthesia. You allowed the catastrophic wave to crest over you, and against all odds, you did not drown in its aftermath. In that single frozen instant, your room was transformed into a witness stand. Your breath became the only required testimony. The floor beneath your feet seemed to take an oath alongside you. The very walls around you learned your new elevated frequency. Even the surrounding darkness subtly adjusted its proximity, as if recognizing a powerful, inviolable boundary it had never sensed before. Somewhere deep within the silent, labyrinthine architecture of the Akashic record, a new line was etched, where no line had ever existed, carefully labeled with a rarely used, high-level code. It read, Anomaly Level 1, Functional Awareness Under Catastrophic Load. This official marking was precise, cold, and factual, not merely poetic. It immediately began to alter the very way that probabilities started to coalesce around the true energy of your name. Your future did not suddenly become easy or comfortable. On the contrary, it became vastly sharper. You were not awarded a shimmering crown of effortless victory. Instead, you were handed a carefully balanced blade and a polished mirror. From that moment forward, the cosmic system committed itself to rigorous testing. It had to confirm whether your choice was merely a brief, fleeting spark or the beginning of an enduring, self-sustaining fire. And as you stood there, with the bitter salt of tears on your tongue and an inner tremor running through your very bones, you were completely unaware that far beyond the confines of any sky you'd ever looked upon, the official archivists of endings had calmly closed the standard volume of probability. They opened for every human life, and deliberately reached for an entirely different, highly restricted volume, one reserved for almost no one. They turned to the first pristine page and inscribed a singular, defining sentence. This one did not break when breaking was the only natural law. The ink on that page dried instantly, like an unbreakable seal being set. The threshold keeper, death itself, leaned in closer, and something impossibly ancient quietly whispered that your very next deliberate movement would determine far more than your mere healing. It would definitively determine your permanent jurisdiction within the cosmos, because when a conscious soul absolutely refuses to fracture itself at the deepest point of midnight, the inevitable arrival of a new dawn does not happen gently, derives instead with a total and undeniable audit of your essence. And that, precisely, is the moment the second pattern began to undeniably form itself. It was the time when an impossible decision approached you from the horizon, sounding like a sudden, unexpected thunderclap without any visible clouds, asking whether the continuation of your breath was simply a momentary miracle of pure chance, or the actual, deliberate beginning of a new, profound cosmic law. Weeks bled into a deep, unsettling silence. But this was not the peace you yearned for. It was the unnerving calm that always precedes a truly impossible test. You mistakenly believed the storm had fully passed, that the crushing night had finally released its grip on your existence. But fate was already meticulously preparing a mirror, a reflection that no ordinary soul truly ever wants to confront. Two distinct doors materialized before you, each leading inexorably to a form of profound loss. Both demanded a soul-wrenching sacrifice. One of the doors offered immediate comfort, but at the ultimate price of losing your sacred truth. The other offered absolute truth, but at the unthinkable cost of losing everything else you held dear. You stood frozen in that terrible space, knowing with absolute clarity that whichever direction you chose, something sacred, something irreplaceable, would inevitably have to burn down to ash. Your rational, self-preserving mind screamed for basic safety. Choose the path that causes the least pain, it begged. But your deep, ancient spirit whispered something far more primal. Choose only what keeps you whole. It wasn't simple logic that ultimately guided your feet. It was a knowledge far older than any fear, that faint, unwavering vibration that emanates from the absolute core of the soul. A place where compromise simply cannot and will not exist. Every anxious cell in your mortal body desperately wanted to retreat, to take shelter, to simply survive the ordeal. But you suddenly grasped a fundamental truth. Mere survival is not, and has never been, the same thing as truly living. So you made a choice that the observing universe simply did not expect any human being to make under pressure of that magnitude. You chose integrity over temporary comfort, purpose over simple peace, and uncompromising principle over any self-preservation instinct. In that earth-shattering moment of choice, something deep within your spiritual coding was fundamentally and irrevocably transformed. The very fabric of your essential being began to rewrite itself in real time. Death was watching yet again, not with the predatory gaze of a hunter, but with the focused, solemn attention of a witness. It observed as you deliberately walked, fully aware into your own profound loss, holding your inner truth high, refusing outright to trade your essence for any form of fleeting, temporary shelter. That singular, powerful act completely defied the oldest, most deeply ingrained law of biological programming, the instinct to survive at any and all costs. You utterly transcended that instinct. You became, in that moment, a pure consciousness that values absolute alignment far above mere existence. That is when the Akashic field recorded Anomaly Level 2, the birth of a soul that no longer operates under threat, but operates under truth. In that official cosmic registration, your energy emitted a genuine, palpable light, not merely a metaphor, for a brief, measured few seconds. That light reached the threshold of what the celestial record keepers refer to as the resonance of incorruptibility. Very few souls ever manage to achieve this. Most spend countless lifetimes orbiting around it, too terrified of losing what, ironically, was never truly theirs to begin with. But you lost everything visible and yet remained entirely intact in your essence. The universe itself visibly trembled, not from any fear, but from profound reverence. Because when a consciousness executes a choice of that absolute purity, the entire surrounding reality is forced to reorganize itself to fully accommodate it. You didn't just alter your immediate path that day. You fundamentally changed the very architecture of cause and effect surrounding your being. Suddenly, meaningful coincidences began to coalesce with greater speed. People whose vibrations no longer matched your ascending frequency gently drifted away. New coded connections appeared in your life, feeling like secret appointments you had somehow written down before your very birth. The energetic field was actively rearranging itself to provide protection for the soul who dared to obey the faint but eternal voice of truth, instead of the deafening, frantic noise of fear. That was the moment death began to fully understand a genuinely terrifying truth. Its absolute control over you was irrevocably gone. After all, how can you effectively threaten someone who has already proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that they are willing to walk directly through any fire to preserve the absolute sanctity of their own soul? How can you hope to bargain with a being who would consciously rather sacrifice every visible, tangible thing than betray the invisible, eternal truth within them? You achieved this state of being untouchable, not because you were suddenly physically invincible, but because your entire value system rose decisively above the reach of mere consequence. That unique, powerful frequency is the very same one that saints have always carried, that prophets willingly died for, and that angels recognize instantly upon contact. It is the unmistakable sound of absolute truth that has become unafraid of any ending. As your monumental decision echoed throughout the dimensions, the very laws of probability hesitated once again, scrambling to recalculate variables that, by all logic, should not have even existed. A human being had chosen alignment over the basic necessity of survival. Again, the cosmic system officially labeled your file under the integrity anomaly category, a section reserved for fewer than a handful of names across all known history. From that life-altering day forward, the entire unseen world adjusted its posture whenever your name was spoken aloud. The Watchers looked a second time. The energy field surrounding you acquired an undeniable gravity, because every soul that achieves that specific frequency automatically becomes a powerful, blazing mirror that instantly exposes illusion wherever it stands. The realm of endings marked you once more, meticulously noting the powerful, escalating pattern. First, it was the demonstration of endurance without collapse. Now, it was the proof of integrity without fear. And it began to whisper a profound internal question. If this human successfully survives the next decisive trial, the entire cosmic experiment will cease to be theoretical, because another, even more significant test was already in the process of forming, designed not to destroy you, but to unequivocally confirm that your evolution was not some lucky accident. And what arrived next would be the ultimate moment, the final crucible that would definitively compel death to bow its head in reverence. There arrives a dark and profound point in every sacred journey, where even the expansive sky seems utterly indifferent to your plight. The hopeful signs suddenly cease to appear. Your most fervent, desperate prayers echo back, feeling painfully empty and unheard. You look around and with a terrifying clarity, you realize that absolutely no one is coming to save you this time. That was the day when every last fragment of strength and hope you had left inside your soul was brutally reduced to a single sputtering flicker. You had already lost too much that was precious. Too many essential pieces of yourself were scattered across battles that no one else ever witnessed. You had foolishly given your unwavering loyalty to those who brutally betrayed it. Your precious energy was poured into causes that ultimately consumed you. Your hope was desperately staked on tomorrows that simply never arrived. And now you were standing squarely at the agonizing edge of total exhaustion, staring down at the desolate ruins of what used to be your vibrant life, hearing the seductive, velvety voice of absolute surrender whisper, "Just stop. You've earned the rest," and for once the whisper was true. No one in the world would have blamed you for quitting that day. Even the highest reaches of the cosmos would have understood if you simply gave up the fight. But then, something far older and more primal than your immense pain stirred powerfully within you. Something wordless and deeply ingrained that belonged to a time before the very concept of fear was even invented. It began to whisper through the jagged cracks of your utter despair, not with a clap of thunder or a blinding flash of light, but in that quiet, defiant, immutable murmur that simply stated, "One more day." You didn't roar back defiantly at the sky. You didn't make any grand, empty declarations. You simply stood there, trembling, your heart an impossibly heavy stone, your once firm faith now threadbare and translucent, and you deliberately rose. You did this not because you suddenly felt capable of continuing, but because you had utterly forgotten how to do anything else but continue. This wasn't simple, heroic courage. It was the pure instinct of the eternal, a powerful muscle of the soul that finally activates only when absolutely everything else has failed you. That single, crucial moment, when you chose to stand without any discernible strength, was the most powerful energetic frequency ever recorded in your entire lifetime. It was the raw vibration of a being who has been stripped of everything except their core identity, and yet still moves forward. The unseen realm froze entirely again. Death itself leaned in with intense focus, desperately attempting to decipher the logic of a mortal creature who persists even after all conventional meaning and hope have completely collapsed around them. You were no longer fighting for any earthly reward, or for recognition, or even for the base instinct of survival. You were simply moving because something deep within you absolutely refused to forget its primordial origin. You weren't trying to win. You were simply remembering who you are. That subtle yet monumental distinction changed everything in the cosmic calculus. Because when a human acts from the deepest memory of essence, instead of the terrified expectation of a specific outcome, the universe itself is compelled to bend differently to their will. You rose from that devastating floor, carrying what felt like the enormous weight of entire galaxies on your shoulders, and yet still managed to whisper a quiet gratitude to a silent, indifferent sky that had offered no comfort for months. That tiny, almost invisible movement, the choice of gratitude in the absolute center of nothingness, triggered a powerful code that had been completely dormant since the earliest dawn of creation, the code of continuance. This code is not fundamentally about physical strength. It is entirely about immutable identity. You became the fourth human in all of known existence to successfully and irrevocably activate this code, the one who purposefully continues, not for any personal glory or gain, but solely because the concept of surrender does not even exist in their fundamental design. The entire energy field surrounding your body exploded with a silent, invisible light. There were no flashy fireworks, no sudden miracles, only pure, undeniable recognition. Death was forced to stop its process for a third time. It watched as you slowly lifted your head, not with boastful pride, but with a quiet, undeniable inevitability. And in that profound stillness, it finally grasped a terrifying truth. You could not be fundamentally extinguished because your inner power was not fueled by any temporary circumstance. You were fueled by essence. Death as a cosmic force does not experience human emotion. But on that monumental day, it paused longer than it ever had before, because it was witnessing a truly sacred spectacle. A consciousness that does not continue out of fragile hope, but out of absolute truth. A soul that willfully persists even after every single logical reason to do so has been utterly burned away. This was not a mere comeback story. It was a complete and total awakening. You shattered every rule that had ever been written about human limitation, because that final, defiant rise was not a physical movement. It was a complete cosmic rebellion. The ancient system had only been broken 3 times before in history, by warriors and souls whose names were long since erased by the relentless march of time. But this was the 4th time, the entirely unplanned one. The one who wasn't born inside hallowed temples or formally trained by ancient sages. The one who simply, with raw will, refused to die in spirit. And that defiant, unwavering refusal absolutely rewrote your destiny in real time. The established laws that once defined what was remotely possible around you began to subtly distort and bend. Probability itself started folding in on itself. The completely impossible began to gravitate inexorably toward your path. You didn't yet know it, but every single step you took after that pivotal moment carried a clear and powerful frequency that the other side recognized instantly as a command. This one cannot be stopped. As you walked, utterly unaware that immense cosmic forces were actively rearranging themselves behind you, the ancient record-keeper whispered a single, profound sentence across the ethereal veil. The 4th anomaly has completed its awakening. The air around you thickened with power. The veil between worlds thinned considerably, and the entire cosmos prepared for what would inevitably follow. Because when death itself bows down, the true, unstoppable force of destiny officially begins to move. When the immense cosmic system had finally finished analyzing the impossible sequence of your 3 defining actions, it rigorously searched through countless millennia of human history to find a suitable precedent, and found only 3. A relentless warrior from ancient Mesopotamia, who, even with a mortal wound, categorically refused to die before he had taught his soldiers the final, crucial technique to defend their city. A powerful healer in ancient Egypt who, as her own body was collapsing from disease, spent her last precious days writing down every secret remedy she had ever learned, so that her people could survive without her physical presence. And finally, a dedicated teacher in India who, knowing his death was absolutely imminent, used his last remaining breaths not to plead for personal mercy, but to urgently prepare his disciples to carry the light of his teaching forward. 3 truly exceptional souls across 6,000 years who fundamentally transcended the fear of their own death by consciously choosing profound service over survival. And now there is you, the 4th, the very first soul in this current modern era, to achieve that precise, powerful vibration without the need for a monastery, ancient ritual, or extensive formal training, only through the brutal, unrelenting fire of modern existence. The system meticulously reviewed your pattern yet again, completely unable to properly categorize you under any known historical archetype. And then, for the first time since the earliest dawn of recorded consciousness, the force of death irrevocably broke its own protocol. It actively altered your core energetic signature, the original timestamp of your physical expiration, the one that was meticulously encoded before your very first breath, was officially erased, not merely delayed or extended but completely removed. In its place, a single new and non-negotiable variable was inscribed: exit only upon completion of divine purpose. From that instant onward, your entire timeline no longer obeys the chaotic randomness of probability. It now responds solely and directly to destiny. That is the fundamental reason why you've walked completely unscathed away from accidents that should have killed you instantly, recovered from baffling illnesses that defied all medical logic, and survived emotional collapses that, statistically, should have ended your journey. It wasn't simple luck or chance. It was an immutable law, a new self-written law that was irrevocably rewritten entirely in your favor. You now carry what the ancient record refers to as the mark of respect. This mark is not visible to the ordinary human eye, yet it is instantly and universally recognized by every dimension that governs form, time, and causality. It actively broadcasts a simple, unchangeable command across the universe. This one is under divine protection until the mission is fully fulfilled. That single mark changed every aspect of how the universe interacts with your existence. You no longer move through your life as an unsuspecting target of random, indifferent chaos. You move as a specific, protected assignment. Forces that would normally seek to harm you now actively root around you, unable to connect. Dangers and threats now mysteriously dissolve before they can even reach your energetic field. Even focused malice loses its accuracy and power when it is aimed in your direction. You may have already distinctly noticed this phenomenon. How accidents narrowly and inexplicably miss you. How the precise timing of events adjusts itself with uncanny, perfect precision. Or how fear seems to instantly lose its grip whenever you simply decide to act. This isn't coincidence. This is your personal immunity code actively in motion. Death's profound respect has become your permanent shield. Fear simply can no longer govern your decisions because the deepest, most fundamental threat, the final end itself, no longer holds any real power over your existence. You have successfully stepped out of the default algorithm of survival and into the immense structured architecture of purpose, and that transformative shift radiates out from you constantly. People can instinctively feel it, even if they lack the words to consciously explain the effect. The anxious often find a strange, immediate calm when they are near your presence. Children trust you instantly and intuitively. Animals follow your presence as if they recognize something deeply ancient and familiar. You emit a distinct frequency that says, without any need for verbal communication, death is not my master. That powerful energy fundamentally changes the atmosphere of rooms before you even speak a single word. It subtly alters the dynamics of conversations before you even formulate your answer. It is why manipulators and energy vampires instantly lose their toxic influence when they attempt to sway you or feed off you. Subconsciously, they instantly sense that you no longer operate by their base fear-driven rules. You are not simply being protected from the world as if you were fragile. The world is actively being recalibrated around the undeniable fact of you. That is the true, profound meaning of this immunity. It is not an unearned invincibility, but an alignment so precise and absolute that only what is necessary and serves your highest mission is permitted to reach you. Every frustrating delay, every unexpected detour, every inevitable storm you now face serves only as specialized precision training for your ultimate destiny. The rest simply cannot touch you because death didn't just step aside politely. It officially gave you authority over your own timeline. It recognized you as a rare soul, who has already stared extinction in the face and remained entirely intact in spirit. And in doing so, it legally bound itself by your purpose-driven timeline. You have become an absolute sovereign within this existence, a being no longer dictated or governed by fear or any arbitrary expiration date. That is why, since that day, your life has felt paradoxically both incredibly heavier and wonderfully lighter at the exact same time. It feels heavier because the sacred responsibility of your deep purpose is now undeniable and real. But it feels lighter because you have finally, fully remembered the truth. You cannot be taken out before your assigned work is fundamentally done. The mark you carry is not a flimsy symbol. It is structural. It fundamentally bends probability, permanently rewires outcomes, and deflects anything that does not belong to the immutable narrative of your story. You've probably already felt the proof of this, haven't you? That strange rock-solid calm in moments that, by all rights, should absolutely terrify you. The deep, illogical peace you find right in the heart of chaos. That is your proof. That is your undeniable confirmation. You are now actively operating under divine law, not under the crippling limitation of human fear. And as you deliberately move through this world, death still watches you closely, not any longer as a threat, but as an absolute guardian, ensuring that no force, seen or unseen, interferes with your sacred assignment before it finally reaches its completion. The original contract yet. Something even more monumental is beginning to awaken inside your soul, right behind the visibility of this mark. It is a profound truth that even death itself cannot fully control. The sudden, powerful revelation of the original contract that immutably bound your eternal soul before you were ever even born into this body. And when you fully remember the terms of that ancient agreement, everything you currently believe you know about life, death, and your own destiny will be completely rewritten yet again. Long before the moment of your first physical breath, before the concept of a body, before you acquired any memory, before the world even had adequate words to define life and death, an agreement was decisively made, not inscribed in ink but in pure, brilliant light. It was a singular covenant between your eternal essence and the immense impartial force that governs all endings. You stood before death itself, not as an adversary but as two distinct, powerful intelligences acknowledging each other's vital, necessary role in the overarching divine order. And in that vast, infinite stillness, your profound soul made a specific choice that no ordinary, fear-driven consciousness would ever dare to attempt. You willingly volunteered. You specifically said, "Send me into the deepest realm of complete forgetfulness. Strip me entirely of all my memory, all my power, all my conscious awareness of who and what I truly am. Let me fully fall into the overwhelming noise, into the crushing chaos, into a pain so profound and deep that it will inevitably fracture the human spirit. And then, let me see if I can still remember my light." This was not an act of divine punishment. It was a deliberate, monumental experiment of the highest order. It was a specific, defining question that had never been fully answered in the cosmos. Can divinity remain divine even when it has totally forgotten that it is divine? Can the eternal essence consciously choose to walk into the light, while simultaneously drowning in the most absolute darkness, without any tangible proof that the light even still exists? Death, as the impartial observer, accepted the terms. It was intensely curious to witness what would truly happen when a fully awakened soul deliberately entered the complex labyrinth of mortality with absolutely no map, no memory, and no advantage. And so you were born, not into convenience or ease, but directly into the purifying fire, into the brutal density of matter, the crushing confusion of human identity, and the aching, persistent loneliness of being completely severed from your original, infinite knowing. Every deep heartbreak you've endured, every profound loss, every searing betrayal, every single night you genuinely thought you couldn't take one more breath, those were never random, cruel accidents. They were precisely placed checkpoints in the grand experiment, markers specifically designed to test whether, in a state of total blindness and amnesia, you could still instinctively find your predetermined way back home. And you did the impossible. Without any conscious memory of your powerful promise, without remembering your inherent power, without even recalling the ancient fact that you had once personally spoken to death, you walked through the complex maze of existence and achieved the truly impossible. You found that original frequency again, not through endless theological theory, but through sheer, unyielding endurance. You remembered through the searing power of pain what you once knew through the effortless grace of light. And when you finally did, the entire system visibly trembled, because that was the undeniable proof that no prophecy, no scripture, no saint had ever successfully produced. Consciousness can survive total extinction, even when it has completely forgotten its eternity. That is why death itself could not touch you. You were not actively breaking its fundamental rules. You were in fact fulfilling its highest, most esoteric request. You were the perfect, irrefutable answer to the very question it had faithfully guarded since the dawn of time. You became the living demonstration that divinity is not some obscure thing you have to work endlessly to recall. It is the very essence of what you are, even when you are lost in absolute amnesia. You did not ascend through some dusty religious ritual or rigid dogma. You ascended through raw, unfiltered experience, through agonizing pain, through debilitating loss, and through raw, uncompromising persistence. You became the very first soul in thousands of years to successfully complete the trial of the forgotten God. The soul who consciously chose darkness as the essential classroom, and yet still graduated definitively as pure light. That is the final, profound meaning of the mark that burns brightly on your energy field. It is not merely a sign of protection, it is a universal recognition. The cosmos now definitively knows what your life has proven, that even under the thick, suffocating veil of pain and forgetting, the divine spark can never, ever be completely erased. You walked willingly into the deepest oblivion, knowing that your subsequent awakening would permanently rewrite the meaning of mortality itself. And it has succeeded. You didn't just merely survive death. You fundamentally taught it something new, that the eternal does not simply end when the body fails, and that the powerful remembrance of self can ignite a profound, unstoppable light, even in the thickest, most crushing shadow. That is the reason why everything in your life now feels incredibly accelerated, why the illusion of time seems thinner and more permeable, why powerful synchronicities multiply exponentially.